In the famous words of The Clash, will they stay or will they go? Let's find out. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. NFL free agency is right round the corner. Wednesday this week, I believe 4 p.m. Eastern time, so 9 p.m. over here in the UK is when the new league year officially opens and NFL free agency starts. The actual legal tampering period begins on Monday, when teams can speak to players that are obviously, coming from other teams, and they can put deals in place that of course don't go through until the Wednesday, but they can still get announced. So expect to see a few of the deals get announced before free agency even starts. The Browns haven't usually tended to get deals done pretty early, so I'll be surprised if they announce any before Wednesday, but you never know. I will be doing videos on Browns free agency targets, guys that I think they should be targeting, offense, defense. I'll probably split that into 2 videos, maybe even 3, depending on how long the quarterback conversation goes. But before we get to that, I just wanted to talk about the Browns' own free agents before we do get into what guys they are looking to sign in free agency. Let's just have a quick look at what guys are free agents for the Browns this year, and just give my quick thoughts on, how likely I think it is that they'll bring them back. So 26 players are set to become free agents for the Browns. 19 of those are unrestricted free agents. 3 of them are restricted free agents, and 4 will be exclusive rights free agents. Let's start with the most obvious one. I think there's 3 guys that I think probably draw the most intrigue. Number 1, of course, Nick Chubb. If you haven't seen the video that I'd done on Nick Chubb, when it was reported that he will most likely enter free agency, I kind of gave my thoughts on it there, but I'll do a quick summary here. I've braced myself most of the offseason for, Nick Chubb not to come back. I've tried to brace, my listeners, and tried to, let them know early that it might be a possibility that he won't come back. And now as we get closer to free agency, all of the reports coming out seem to suggest that this might be the end for Nick Chubb in Cleveland. So right now, I think it's probably more likely than not that he signs somewhere else. But as I said in my video, I think this is the Browns know what number they want to bring Nick Chubb back at. They probably already, they probably already communicated that with Nick Chubb. So now they're going to let him go into free agency, go see if he can get more money, more years on a deal somewhere else. If not, then I imagine they would bring him back. So right now, I'd probably go 60-40 that he leaves. But fingers crossed that they can work something out and bring Nick Chubb back in some capacity, because he deserves to retire a Cleveland Brown, and I think most of you would also agree with that. Number 2, I would probably go with Jed Wills. Someone I think a lot of fans are going to be happy to see the back of. It's just not worked out for Jed in Cleveland. You go back to 2020, his rookie year. He played a key part in what was an historically good offensive line for the Cleveland Browns. It was so good that year that years later it had pundits and commentators talking about how the Browns offensive line is so good, when any Browns fan or anyone that actually watches the team knew that the offensive line was not good. It was just so good in 2020 that kind of carried over and people just assumed they were still good. I agree with most with Jed Wills. It has been pretty bad. When your best football was your rookie season and you're going into your 6th NFL season, it's not the best sign. It does show that maybe you've not put the most effort into improving as a player on the field. It's almost as if he's gotten worse every year. Of course, the injuries have not helped. But I think it's probably time to move on from Jed Wills and go go find your next left tackle, whether that be free agency or in the draft, or most likely both. But I think it's probably more likely than not that that they move on from Jed Wills. And then I think the third that brings the most intrigue, I suppose, just because it's the position, Jameis Winston. I said, towards the end of last season that I wouldn't be against bringing Jameis back. You're going to go the route of drafting a quarterback. You need a veteran regardless. There are some better options out there, I think, which we'll talk about when we do the quarterback video. But I do think they will keep tabs on Jameis, and if they are unable to, let's say, get their number one target, they might circle back to Jameis, because I do think that he can provide a serviceable role as a bridge option. So while I don't think it's likely, I wouldn't write it off. I could see a world where Jameis does come back. Wide receiver Elijah Moore is an interesting one. Another one that I said, towards the end of last season that I would be interested in bringing back. The consistency wasn't there, but how much of that was down to the inconsistent quarterback play that he's had to deal with in his 2 years at the Browns. I mean, if you think about it, his first season he had 5 different quarterbacks, and then his second season multiple again, and Deshaun Watson's out, and then we've got DTR in, and then Jameis in. So he's dealt with a lot of inconsistency at the quarterback position, which I think has been the reason why maybe his play hasn't been that consistent. But he has made plays for the Browns. He's shown that he can be a valuable wide receiver in that room. So depending on the number, I think Elijah Moore is someone that they would look to bring back, whether that's on a 1 year kind of prove it deal, maybe 6-7 million, or maybe 2 years and split that money across. I'm not entirely sure, but I do think that they would be interested in bringing Elijah Moore back. The other wide receiver, James Prochet, I don't think they bring him back, but I think I've said this about him twice now, and he somehow seems to make it back onto the roster. So while I don't think it's likely that they re-sign him, they probably somehow get him back in the preseason roster anyway. The offensive lineman, Michael Dunn, I do think they will bring back. They've shown that they've done that before with Michael Dunn. They re-signed him last year as well. He's just a valuable piece to have on the offensive line. He's a really good depth piece because he can fill multiple roles across the line. If your tackle goes down, he can step in. If your guard goes down, he can step in. Hell, if your center goes down, he can step in. So he is a valuable piece to have on that offensive line. And because of that, I think he's probably the most likely out of the free agent offensive linemen to be re-signed. And then it would come down to, in my opinion, probably one of either Hakeem Adeniji, Jaron Christian, James Hudson, or Jermaine Ifedi. So they are the other 4 offensive linemen that are free agents. Hakeem Adeniji, he was injured the entire year, so we haven't seen anything from him. Maybe the team saw enough in the limited time before he got hurt to take another swing on him, but to be honest, I doubt it, and I think the injury will push him out over the other guys. Jaron Christian has started games for the Browns, I think quite a few games in 2023, which he was more than serviceable at, and then, in leading the Browns to the playoffs, I say leading, playing a part in getting the Browns to the playoffs, and then even started multiple games last year as well, so he's got experience on this line, so I think that will help him. And then James Hudson, again, he's got experience on the line as being the Browns swing tackle the last few years. They're familiar with him. He's familiar with them. And then Jermaine Ifedi as well. He played the last 6 or 7 games this year at left tackle, and he wasn't amazing, but he wasn't exactly the worst left tackle I've ever seen. I think it would be one of those with Michael Dunn as the offensive lineman that we bring back, but who knows, depending on what they do with the other guys, the starters, maybe they bring 2 of these guys back, which if it was the case, I'd probably go Jermaine Ifedi, James Hudson or Jaron Christian. I think they'll probably beat out Hakeem Adeniji. Tight end Jordan Aikens. Now this is someone that I could see a path of him coming back. The Browns need tight ends. They've got one tight end on the roster next year in David Njoku. I expect them to draft one, but I also expect them to sign one as well. I think this will purely just come down to what they're trying to do. Jordan Aikens, the last couple of years when they were trying to, establish a more downfield passing game, made more sense. So now that we're going back to a West Coast scheme, Kevin Stefanski loves those heavy personnels. Maybe Jordan Aikens isn't, good enough of a blocker to make that cut. But if they are to look for just a pass catching tight end, then Jordan Aikens could be someone that they'd look to bring back just because of the familiarity. But I do think it's probably unlikely, like I think with a lot of these guys as well. The other tight end, Jeff Swaim, I'd be very surprised if they bring him back. They've already tenured another tight end that I will get onto, so I think it's even more unlikely that Jeff Swaim would be back than Jordan Aikens. Linebacker Devin Bush. Now this is an interesting one because the season didn't start that great for him, but towards the end of the year he put up some much better performances in my opinion. He did well in the absence of JOK. That linebacker room as a whole held up better than better than I expected when JOK went out, and Devin Bush played a part of that. So I think that will just purely come down to the number. If they can re-sign him on the same deal that they got him on last year, I think they'd definitely do it. It's just a matter of if he's earned himself a few more pennies in some of those better performances towards the end of the year, maybe another team's willing to offer him a bit more money. But I think that's one that both parties would be interested in a reunion if the number is right, and I would be interested in doing so as well. Cornerback Mike Ford Jr. and also Tony Brown II. Mike Ford, of course, would probably be the more likely to be brought back. It's Mike Ford. They always seem to get him on the roster somehow, whether that's the practice squad or the actual 53. So I think if any of them are going to come back, it would be Mike Ford. I think it's unlikely that Tony Brown is brought back. I do think it's unlikely that Mike Ford is brought back as well. But as I said, I think he'll somehow go through free agency, not get signed, and then the Browns will pick him up in the preseason and he'll somehow make it back onto the roster and be playing games for us. But who knows? I think it's unlikely. Running back Donta Foreman, I don't think they bring him back. Not entirely his fault. The line he was running behind last year was terrible. The Browns' run game as a whole was terrible. But he didn't really show you anything to justify bringing him back. I've been pretty loud and pretty vocal all off season about how I think the Browns need to completely revamp this running back room, bring in multiple guys. You need to bring in a guy that's going to be your running back one, whether that's in the draft, probably most likely the draft. So then it's just who you pair with, those one or two guys and Jerome Ford. For me, it would be Nick Chubb, of course. But if they don't go to Nick Chubb, maybe they're interested in Donta Foreman. But as I said, I think it's unlikely that Donta Foreman will be brought back. Centre and now also technically fullback Nick Harris is another interesting one because you don't have a backup centre. If you're not planning of drafting one, maybe you bring back Nick Harris. As I mentioned earlier with the tight ends, going back to West Coast, going back to Kevin Stefanski's more, the scheme that he ran previously, he loves to run those heavy personnels. Nick Harris at fullback as a big guy is definitely something we would see. So I think that might be someone that they look to bring back. They were willing to trade a pick for him to get him in last year, after he signed with Seattle. So I think Nick Harris could be high up on this list as one of the guys that they would look to bring back. Linebacker Khaleke Hudson. I don't think they bring him back. I think he'd be the bottom of the linebacker free agents this year. I think Devin Bush, if they were to bring anyone back, it would be him. Khaleke Hudson would be more of a, goes through free agency, not getting signed, and then gets brought in, for the preseason if it is that route. Defensive tackle Maurice Hurst. I loved when he was on the field. He's made some big plays for the Browns. I love the belly rubs. But unfortunately, this is 2 years at the Browns now and 2 years where he's not been able to finish the season because of a season-ending injury. I don't think they're going to take that bet on the third year as well. So I would be surprised if they brought back Maurice Hurst. I don't think that is going to be an option for them. Anyone left on this list? I think that is it for all of the unrestricted free agents. So moving on to the exclusive rights free agents. So tight end, as I mentioned earlier, tight end Blake Whiteheart, the most Madden generated tight end name. Everyone remembers his touchdown pass last year, and then everyone kind of had to check their screen saying, sorry, who caught the touchdown? Blake Whiteheart. Okay. They've tenured him. They've brought him back. They obviously liked what they saw. So he will be back with a chance to try and fight for a roster spot next season. Which, as I mentioned, the Browns only actually had one tight end on the roster next year in Njoku. So you need bodies in that room anyway. And as I mentioned with the other guys, if I was to bring someone back, over Jeff Swaim, it would probably be Blake Whiteheart. And then linebacker Winston Reed, really happy about this one. They've tenured him. He was an undrafted rookie last year, and he started in 3 games. I think he played in all but 1 game in some capacity. Of course, most of that on special teams, but he did take snaps, on the defense as well. As I mentioned, he started 3 of the games. Everyone remembers that fumble recovery against the Steelers in that win. He showed flashes of more than you want to see from an undrafted linebacker, so was really pleased with his development last year. I'm happy that they've tenured him and are looking to bring him back, and I'm excited to see his development next season because, as I mentioned, more than a few big plays from Winston Reed last year in his rookie year. Defensive tackle Michael Dwumfor, they've not tenured, so he will be leaving. And then running back John Kelly, same again, they've not tenured. But kind of the same with Mike Ford and some of these other guys. He'll somehow get back on the roster, as he seems to always do. Think go through free agency, not get signed, and then the Browns will pick him up for the preseason roster. Same maybe with DeAnthony Bell. I think they love him so much they're gonna find a way, because this is 2 years now. I do my roster predictions every year. I think the year before last year I had him on the roster. Last year I had to take him out because I just didn't think they'd be able to fit him in, and they fit him in. So do they re-sign him? My head says no, but my heart says yes, because they seem to always find a way of bringing him back. James Houston, who they got off waivers from Detroit last year, they've already announced that they will not be offering him the tenure, so he will not be coming back. And then Bailey Zappi, it's one of those ones. I think same with the other guys. They're not exactly going to re-sign him, but maybe he gets brought back for the preseason. Maybe he gets a chance to, fight for a roster spot in that quarterback room. But I think the turnover is going to be quite high in that room anyway, so I think it would be unlikely. That is all of the free agents for the Browns. As I said, I just wanted to, before we go full steam ahead into free agency and talk about the targets that the Browns, will be going after, I just wanted to give a kind of quick, brief overview of their free agents, what guys I think they'd be looking to bring back. And as you just listened to, I don't think many. There's not that many guys on this list that I think the Browns are going to be bringing back, and I think that's partly a credit to the Browns, which, look, Ollie praising the Browns again. Let me get to it. Because the last few years, we've not really had any big name or impact players hitting free agency like you might see with some of the other teams. This front office has a lot of faults, but one thing that they've done well in the past is get their guys signed, get their guys locked up, and basically stopping any chance of their best players even getting near to free agency. So not that many big guys on this list, as it's kind of been the last few years, so I don't expect them to bring many of them back. But as I mentioned, for me, Nick Chubb, Elijah Moore, Michael Dunn, maybe one of the tackles in, James Hudson, Jermaine Ifedi, or Jaron Christian, and then maybe Jameis Winston, depending on what goes down with the quarterback market. But they, I think, are the most likely guys to come back. Whereas the rest of the guys, I think it's unlikely that they would be re-signed in any capacity. And if they are on the team, it would be more so that they went through free agency, didn't get signed anywhere, and then the Browns picked them up for pre-season. But that is everything from me. As I said, the next couple of days, I'll be rolling out all of my kind of free agent videos. I'll probably do it in 3 quarterbacks, offense and defense, but we'll see how it gets on. I'll be recording most of those today and tomorrow. Get them out. I wanted to get them out before Wednesday, of course, because that's when free agency starts. But now I'm kind of thinking, what if the Browns technically sign someone in the legal tampering period? So maybe I release these videos 2 a day over the next 2 days. You'll see. But either way, they'll be out. They'll be there for you guys to see. All my thoughts on, the Browns free agent targets, what guys I think they should be going after, and what guys I think they shouldn't be going after, maybe. But that would do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free, but it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and as I always say, even if I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Enjoy the end of your weekend. Enjoy next week. Enjoy free agency. It's one of my favourite parts of the NFL. But most importantly, as always, go Browns.